Is there a point to all this? Let's find a point. Is there a point to my act? I would say there is. I have to. The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and when you choose to go on it, you think it's real, because that's how powerful our minds are. And the ride goes up and down and round and round. It has thrills and chills, and it's very brightly colored, and it's very loud, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride, and we kill those people. Shut him up. We have a lot invested in this ride. Shut him up. Look at my furrows of worry. Look at my big bank account and my family. Has to be real. It's just a ride. But we always kill those good guys who try and tell us that. You ever notice that? And let the demons run amok? But it doesn't matter, because it's just a ride. And we can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love. The eyes of fear want you to put bigger locks on your door, buy guns, close yourself off. The eyes of love instead see all of us as one. Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever.
Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, December 22nd, 2025. Happy winter solstice for those of you who have celebrated or are celebrating this true new year, if we could call it that. Thanks for joining us on all the platforms. Thank you to a wonderful moderator, Raymond, who's here. I don't know if Ronnie will join us as well. Christine's not with us today. She's out and about, but we're going to have a great show anyways. So today I want to talk about why so many future prediction models are failing. We're going to look into some of those predictions, some that I think still remain quite accurate. And we're going to talk about the C factor, which is the factor that actually makes it so unpredictable, and why that is and shall be good news if we choose it to be good news. All in all, the future prediction models, none of them, I'm talking about serious researchers, serious future researchers that are not tied to the crypto game or the gold game, that are not tied to the defense game, so that have no horse in a race other than that they're human beings. And all of them have pretty, well, let's just say dark predictions for the near future. I want to play a clip by the Chinese professor, predictive history. I know many of you have been following his channel. I've been doing some deep diving on him, on him as a person, on a Chinese professor. No conclusive conclusion right now yet, other than interesting history, ties, both positive and negative to the Chinese government. But there's no definitive conclusion yet, other than, the guy is using the past and historic patterns and his deep knowledge of those historic patterns to make a game plan for the future. Predictive history is what he calls it. And here's a 4-minute clip that shows a very likely scenario from his perspective of what's going to happen in the next 10 to 20 years. Once again, full disclaimer, I'm not saying this is going to happen. As a matter of fact, I'm more on the side of this guy and most others are not including the C factor that I want to talk about. But let's watch this. It's going to frame this for us. Okay.
The main enemy right now is Iran. In Europe, you have the Europeans about to go to war with Russia in Ukraine. America right now is threatening to attack Venezuela, okay? South America. You have 10% of the US Navy in the Caribbean, and they're about to attack Venezuela. You have China and Japan at conflict. You have India here, and you have Africa, okay? So what's gonna happen in the short term? Okay, well, what we know is that Europe is planning to go to war with Russia. At the same time, you have a lot of immigrants in Europe. And this is going to create civil wars in Europe. Okay, civil war. So you have both war with Russia as well as civil war. So Europe is kind of screwed, okay? America has the same situation where the left-right divide is so polarized that eventually they'll go to war. If you read the news, you may have heard about the shootings at Brown University, as well as this MIT physicists who were shot, okay? So random violence will be more and more common in the United States. And you can argue that it's all deliberate because the idea is this. Let's just say you have a jar. You put red ants in a jar and black ants in a jar. They get along fine. But you take the jar and you just shake it up, and now they're at war with each other, okay? That's what's happening where the left and right, they really don't like each other. They don't talk to each other, and they refuse to engage in debate with each other. But they're not going to fight each other unless there's violence, in which case their tribal mentality takes over and they start killing each other, okay? So we're going to expect civil war in the United States. Then you're going to have the Americans start to attack Venezuela and possibly other countries in South America. America is in for a bad time, okay? China, yeah, I mean, Japan and China and India, they're all gonna have conflicts with each other. But also what we should expect is that America starts to embargo China, meaning America uses its sea power to block China from accessing resources from overseas. And China imports most of its oil and a lot of its food. So if there's a blockade of China, you can expect the Chinese economy to really suffer, okay? And then what we can expect to happen is America at some point will go to war with Iran. And this will destroy both countries, okay? Iran will not lose this war, but it won't win this war either because America is just gonna bomb the crap out of Iran. It's gonna send Iran back decades. But America will lose this war. But this is important because if America loses this war, it's forced out of the Middle East. And once it's forced out of the Middle East, all its military assets goes to Israel, which creates the Pax Judaica. Yeah, does that make sense, guys? That's the plan. Okay, now you have Pax Judaica. And what Pax Judaica will do is start to control the world. Because through chaos and conflict, Pax Judaica can make a lot of money, right? Because Pax Judaica, what's going to happen is that you have these technology companies like Google, they're going to move over to Pax Judaica and build a global surveillance state. If you have civil wars, you need AI to control people. If you're going to war with Russia, you need weapons, okay? But you also need financing as well. So you can expect a lot of banks to move to Israel, and it's possible Israel becomes now the global reserve currency because everyone is trading with Israel. If you're Russia, you need to trade with, you need to trade your resources, right? Oil, energy, and grain, okay? So Russia controls a third of the world's carbohydrates. Guess what, guys? Israel controls Africa. So what will happen is that Russia and other countries will sign a trade agreement with Israel, and Israel becomes a center of global trade, okay? Does that make sense? So this is how Pax Judaica will profit. And remember that Israel has the world's best intelligence agency, the Mossad. And what they can do is go around the world and create as much chaos as possible. Okay? So while the world is burning, Israel, Pax Judaica, is profiting. And that's what the future looks like for the next 10, 20 years.
So that was the Chinese professor predictive history on the next 10 to 20 years. I wanted to set the frame because from a macro standpoint, if you're looking at countries, interest groups, religions, military pacts, finance world, big corporate, if you look at all of this, then his macro, analysis, I think is very spot on. There's really no doubt that he's I think, very accurate. However, neither him nor the Armstrongs of the world, of Armstrong economics, nor the Gerald Celentis of the world, and all the other future forecasters that are even more, mainstream oriented, are factoring in certain things that our community does, that we're observing, that we're actually living through, and that I think will create a massive question mark, not just in the future sometime, but it's already doing it now. So I want to explore what I see over the next 12 months. Some of this aligns with their forecasts. However, some point to a much bigger picture, actually to the biggest mystery that, that we're living through. And by the end of this show, I think you're going to know exactly what I mean, and you're going to remember it as a feeling, because maybe you're feeling it too. I think highly important. So let's look at this together. What I think, general themes, trust is going to keep dropping. We see this, and not just in alternative communities, not just sort of in spiritual communities or anything like that. Trust is dropping everywhere. It's people are really stopping to believe officials or experts because of massive contradictions, so many lies and corruption. But reactions are vastly different. This is just the fact that trust is dropping and will continue to drop. It's already happening. Protests are becoming normal. So far, so that people don't really, even people who are sort of prone to it, don't really react to it much longer. But this is going to just continue to grow. I mean, there's too many countries to mention, but recently we've had Bulgaria, we have France, we have parts of America that are in constant protests. We have Britain, massive protests over the last months, and so forth. It's happening in Germany, it's happening in Austria, it's happening all over the place, and other continents too. With that, and with the sort of the expansion of the questioning movement, so there are too many people asking questions, and too many people also saying things that are outrageous to the system. So the censorship just continues, and each country, each nation, each continent has their own version. The EU is going for a very broad stroke, right? Here in America, it's very pinpointed. Certain things are excluded from free speech and are being attacked harshly, but that's really just backfiring. It's backfiring massively, because people just are seeing, oh, they're trying to protect certain things, or why is that particular group of people so highly protected and everyone else is fair game? It's creating this backlash, no doubt about it. Economic pressure, that as a normal thing wakes people up. You see that over the last years, without people necessarily changing much about their lifestyle, changing much about the work situation, their ability to earn money has gone significantly down. And or I should say, their ability to live life the way that they used to with the same money that they earn has gone significantly down. They lost purchase power, whether you call that inflation, whether you call that price increase, whether you call that a conscious pricing out of people into universal basic income. All of these are a bit ways to look at it, but that's what wakes people up, because they keep asking themselves, so we're spending all this money, we're sending all this money overseas, or we're fighting wars, and we're supporting countries, and we're sending it to God knows where. People here, however, can't make ends meet, and supposedly this new technology is supposed to help us, but it's really not. And so in the United States, that really tracks this, credit card debt is at an all-time high. People are maxed out. That usually causes anger, awakening, upheaval. And then there's this moment that many have already had and many are about to have is where they're done with heroes. There's only so many times that you can be sold the story of the hero and then the hero doesn't deliver, or the hero isn't exactly delivering the way that either he said or she said she would, or the way that it was expected or projected. And that happens only so many times in a person's life. Now, the reaction can be complete withdrawal and just, losing all faith in anything, or it can be empowerment where you stop asking, what can they do? What can we do? That's a big point. That's really, that I would say is part of the C factor. And if you wonder what C stands for, it's the consciousness factor. So when people stop asking who can fix the situation I'm in, to what is it that I can do, that is a massive leap in consciousness. That's the C factor. And I'm going to explain why the C factor makes future predictions less and less possible, because there's something happening in people beyond what can be measured, or at least classified by forecasters. Leaderless movements rise, and I would consider our community and our communities to be such leaderless movements. Not that there aren't people speaking and visible, but these folks they're not there to be leaders in terms of, oh, follow me, I'm going to guide you and herd you in the right direction. That's not what most of these folks are about, the real ones. It's simply about helping each other see a bigger picture. And these movements are arising where it's not about one figure that you can extinguish. It's about the message itself. It's about the knowledge that gets transported, and it becomes the crowd carries it. And when the crowd carries it, it's really, really hard to shut that down, because in sort of in the past, you had these leaders with these movements with huge leaders, the Martin Luther Kings of the world, and you could shatter and traumatize this entire movement by building the leader up and then killing him, right? That is going to become less and less a thing. And unfortunately, there's proof. The proof's in the pudding. Over the last 5 years, various movements in the broader truth community, some better, some worse, but they're still there, have seen leaders die or outright get killed. But the movement itself did not die, or the momentum necessarily didn't die. Truth kept coming out. So it's kind of like, cutting off the snake's head and to appear the hydra, and in this case, it's for every head that you cut off, 100 appear, or 1,000 appear. It's a good thing. Parallel choices are growing. This is where we also get into the C factor, the consciousness factor. People have started with alternative platforms, alternative media, to get the message out, and pretty soon people realize that's not where it ends. It's about alternative, autonomous ways of living, and that's really emerging. Like, people are really building their little communities and structures and systems that are beginning to work, and they're all over the place. But and I want to get to this a little later in the show. The consciousness factor really kicks in here, but the communities are really not about what people think they're about. There's something much, much bigger sort of at the end of this journey, or towards the end of this journey. But this is an important one, that the parallel choices are growing, and it's happening fairly quiet. So a lot of these communities are working, but not really promoting or advertising. They're just there, and for people to find them, and they keep doing their thing, because they're like mushrooms. They're coming up all over the place, and they know if they make a big fuzz about it, it's much easier to start attacking the first big ones, rather than they're getting built and then there's just too many to attack them. Then there is a soft non-compliance movement, which is, well, it's an interesting thing because people are starting to maybe not go as far as removing themselves, but they're starting to withdraw from certain things and just not participating any longer. I can't tell you the number of people who have chosen not to do things that they've done all their lives because they used to be afraid of the consequences. They're not any longer. So they're asking themselves, where am I supporting this machine, knowingly or unknowingly? And what can I do to take that support out of the machine? That's a big one. And that's sort of decisions that people are making on a case-to-case basis, but they're making them at a much bigger rate than I've ever seen. Because we've been in this field for going on 20 years. And trust me, there's a big momentum going on. The left-right paradigm, specifically 2025, was a really eye-opening year that, and this is going to continue to happen. The left-right paradigm is hard to be kept up. And you can see this by the ever-growing theatrics, fireworks. It's all they're literally pulling out all the stops to keep people in it, but people are sort of like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Is, it's two wings of the same bird. And fundamentally, the general direction is still going where it's always gone. So this is really, and will continue to lose its power. And it's going to be interesting to watch how the system is going to react. Right now, it's just throwing out things at such a rapid pace. It's building up new influencers. It's trying out new collaborations. It's bringing in new people into their respective movements, but it doesn't seem to be working. I would say that two things are happening, which are concerning for these movements, political movements, is people are leaving the movements. They're leaving the idea of political parties and supporting a party and being all, invested in it. At the same time, no new people are joining. There was a momentum over the last years where people were joining the movements, but that's, I think, stopped. So, and that's for them, it's concerning, right? Because it's putting it on shaky ground. And then we get into another huge consciousness factor, which is that spiritual meaning is entering the conversation. This is where it all really shifts massively. This is where we get into exponentiality. What I really want to talk about is that when, and I want to take this off the screen for a moment here because it's, there we go. So when in the past, mostly in the past, people have discovered deception, corruption, conspiracies, it was usually on a political level, secret society level, financial level. Those were the big ones where people sort of started researching, really diving into it. The past few years, the present, and I say the next few months and years are really people are really focused on what is behind all it. What is bigger than politics, bigger than secret societies, bigger than the worldly conspiracy that we can see. And they're going into the spiritual aspects of it. And even if you start going down sort of the dark spiritual route at first in your research, it ultimately begs the question, why? Why is there this big, massive influence there? And at some point, people start not necessarily just looking forward, they're looking inward. This is really where the bigger questions and answers are. And this consciousness factor will lead to decisions that you and I simply cannot predict. When I say there's a huge question mark in the future, is because I think there is, because we don't know. We don't know what happens when a certain number of individuals ask big enough questions, experience big enough answers, and what kind of decisions that leads to. We don't know. We don't know the effect that has on the broader collective We know about consciousness compensation. It's a concept we talked about quite a lot, that when you have reach a certain level of consciousness, you sort of compensate for a fairly big number of people who are below a certain level of consciousness. So it's like a leveling or evening you're evening it out. But we don't know what happens when a certain factor is reached that wasn't reached before, or we at least don't have a historic record. This is the consciousness factor. So when people talk about alternative communities, self-sustaining communities, self-reliable communities, when they talk about going off the grid and being with friends and family and groups that empower each other, that is not the end of the story. That's not really the self-serving purpose of it. That is the path. Once you are in a more relaxed state, once you're not in a constant survival mode, once you're not constantly bombarded with bad news and stories that the world tells you about what's going to happen, what you should be afraid of, what all that stuff, once you're in a more relaxed place and you're naturally curious, you ask more questions: why, who, where, when, what, and you're in this relaxed state, you get answers much easier. And so when people live in communities that are not built on the same model, survival, dog eat dog, cutthroat, all that, but they're cooperative, then there's more space and time for introspection, meditation, prayer, song, dance, whatever does the trick. And consciousness then is on the rise every day, not just 3 times a year, but every day. And the only prediction I can make is that it's going to reach a factor where it becomes completely unpredictable what that will do to individuals, to groups, and the collective. So all these predictive models that these economists and futurists have little to no regard for the development of our consciousness. And if they do, then they keep it in a very, very small box. And what I have seen personally over and over again in the last years, that there's a growing number of people who are transcending all boxes in their thinking, all boxes in their living, all boxes in their awareness. I'm not saying they're enlightened, they've reached it, but it's nothing like I've ever seen before. So the momentum of the machine might keep rolling, but if the interaction with the machine becomes less and less, what significance does the machine have? The machine is only as significant as our belief or acquiescence to it. So in other words, as long as we believe the machine is the guiding principle, that wherever the system goes, whatever it does, that matters and that controls our lives, well, that's how long the machine is really important and powerful. But once we experience something that is greater than the machine loses its grip on us. It loses its authoritative position above us. Not because it changed, but because we changed. That's the big consciousness factor. That's the C factor, And I consciously didn't use the X factor because I don't like that analogy. But the C factor is the consciousness factor. So when I can observe this phenomenon in my small world, then, and I know as within, so without, micro equals macro. If I know the principles and the holographic principle, that each little segment of the holograph shows you the entire holograph, no matter how small you break it down, then I'm seeing a big, beautiful question mark. I really am. What does that mean? I don't know. It could mean that what people have called the ascension, or this, proverbial moving up the dimensions, it could mean that this matrix will lose its grip and power, and that we might see more and more of the real thing. It could mean a variety of things, but I'd rather not put a limit on it. I'd rather not put a concrete image to it, because it might limit us. I would much rather that we go and explore these big questions together, that we build more bridges amongst each other, and that we continue to shed our own limitations, the onion layers, by continually raising our consciousness, um, and having truth as the only guiding principle. Like, what can we do today to align more with the truth? The truth being a feelable, identifiable vibration, above any and all other vibrations. The highest form of any and everything is truth, right? It's the essence, the nature of what is. And that factor, economists, future forecasters, and all these others, they I don't know if they think about it, but they most certainly are not considering it. And to take the 20th century and what has happened as a predictive mechanism simply won't work much longer. It might work in isolated cases, like I say, but it won't be really workable as a overall model. However, here's the important caveat. It's still going to appear that way because they still have their hands on the megaphone. So they can still project the appearance of something online, on the social medias, on the screens where people are glued to, a lot of people, but something entirely else is already unfolding in physical reality, right? So this is why the prediction models, I believe, are already failing, in the real world, which is not the real world. We know this. In this matrix world, they're already failing. And I believe more and more people are having glimpses of what we might call prime reality. They're tapping into it more, they're feeling it more. Last but not least, all of this is really not about what's happening out there. Out there, in simple terms, is a mirror. Now, what does it mirror? I believe out there as a shared reality mirrors the dominant energies within us. So if they're fairly low, or vibration, if they're fairly low frequencies, then the world is going to mirror that as a shared experience. When they get higher, somehow the same principle must be true. We see this in our individual realities. People that are making shifts, they can see extraordinary changes in the course of months and few short years. Extraordinary changes. Their lives completely shift. That is the consciousness factor. It's not about working harder. It's not about the better job. It's not about necessarily the better circumstances. All of these things are results of it, but they're not the cause of it. You and the changes within are the cause of it always. So if that's true for one person, it's true for a group, for a family, for a community, for the collective. The Like David Icke said, in our most recent interview, which I think was one of his very, very best in terms of making it so clean and clear, like breaking these seemingly complex scenarios, or findings down to something where each and every one of us can find ourselves in them, can find ourselves in this story. And I think it's a brilliant watch. So if you haven't seen it, it's on our channel. It's a 2-hour conversation with David Icke. I think he um, every single time. I think he's only getting better and better and better. And that's the power of being with a thought and a stream of thoughts for decades. It's just you get better at it, right? Um, what is the what is maybe at an end result of all of this? I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that wherever people align their lives with the truth more, and I said there's this easy exercise where you close your eyes in the morning and you set the intention to today sync up, line up with the frequency of truth, and that from that moment forward, that you have this ability to feel whether something is closer to the truth or closer to a lie, that you get an intuitive knowing immediately, which gives you sort of an indicator which direction you should go. But what I see in people that are on this journey, that are going beyond what they've been programmed with, beyond what they've been taught, beyond their deepest fears, beyond their deepest worries, beyond all the crap, is that there's so much more love in their lives. There's more peace, there's more truth, there's more joy. And and they're stepping into who they really are, which means they're becoming more and more and more every day. So all I'm going to say as a final theory here, that when we talk about this proverbial split in people that go, for the lack of a better term, down the spiral, and people that are going up the spiral, our experience of this previously shared reality might not be the same any longer. We might not even be seeing the same things any longer. I don't know whether that's true or not. It's just sort of an intuition I have, that we might still be sharing a similar space, but at the same time, we're not seeing the same things any longer. And here's the interesting part. How would we know? How would we know if we just see slightly different things? It would take a really deep conversation to even figure that out. But I do think that is part of the possibility, and a liberation, which is the key point, a liberation from any and all restraints, hierarchies, authorities, from any and all beliefs, conscious or unconscious, that anyone else has any authority over us, that we answer to other people, that we have to ask permission, or anything like that. Always, of course, in the spirit of do no harm. We're not harming anyone or anything, right? That's the overarching spirit. But beyond that, there is a sense that we're transcending this. It's a beautiful sense. So yeah, this is the C factor, the consciousness factor, and why I think that the future models of predictions, or the models of predicting the future, are failing and will continue to fail and have already failed, and they don't know why. These researchers don't know why, because most of them haven't looked. That's the one place they haven't looked yet. Inside, they haven't looked yet. Here, they look everywhere else. Once you look here, everything changes. All right, my friends, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being here with us. We're going to hop over to Locals, inspired.locals.com, if you want to join us for some coffee and truth over there. Much love to you. We might or might not come on before Christmas. I don't know yet. It's not decided yet. But if you celebrate, and in whatever way you celebrate, because there's an infinite way to celebrate, Merry Christmas to you. Much love, many blessings. We'll be back with you again very, very soon. Christine and I would love to invite you into something really special. We started a new show on Locals called Farm Tales, where we share the real stories from our homestead, the animals, the garden, the beauty, and even the funny mishaps along the way. Just like all of our work, it's about living consciously in harmony with nature and creating a life of true freedom. Please click the link down below and join us for Farm Tales on Locals. We would love to see you there.